briefly about what is efficiency and why it matters, and then dive into some specific techniques. And we're really trying to go beyond the obvious sort of techniques like training your users and training your report analysts and developers, and really get into some things that perhaps other people are not familiar with, some new ideas. Talk at the end briefly about implementation and a conclusion, and then, as I mentioned, have some time for Q&A. So what is Perkins Consulting? We've been around doing analytics and information management for over 20 years now. Our focus is really on making information powerful, and the way we interpret that is that it means making sure that all your information that you use in your organization is in line with where your organization is trying to go, what you're trying to achieve. It's about being able to have confidence in the quality of that information so that you can make business decisions based upon it. And it's about being able to facilitate internal communication so that business people in an organization can get together and have intelligence conversations that are based on data. And there's a process that kind of wraps that whole thing and makes it achieve, makes information powerful. So we do a lot of work around data quality and sort of enterprise-wide information enablement. The focus this morning is on efficiency, right? Why efficiency? We believe that pretty much every organization today has reporting and analytics software. And by the way, Perkins Consulting does sell both the Microsoft Power BI and IBM Cognos software, but this presentation this morning is entirely independent of particular applications, right? These are techniques that can be applied with any application software. So every organization has these things. They have people in place. There's a lot of benefits that have been documented. There's a couple of studies, particularly out of MIT, that I really like that have some good numbers about, you know, how you can improve return on equity and asset utilization if you're a highly data-driven organization. But, you know, we did a survey, a web survey a few years ago to over 1,000 organizations. Few of them were completely happy with how much they're getting out of it. And I think a lot of that comes back to they feel like it takes too long, it's too slow, it's too awkward, it's too people dependent. Some of the symptoms of problems with efficiency are actually staff burnout, people trying through sort of individual heroics to get incredible amounts of reporting and analytics done super quickly. We actually have a blog post up on our website that's kind of interesting that talks about that in a particular story. We also see a lot of shadow IT. We see a lot of people in organizations trying to work around any sort of centralized reporting and analytics group and kind of get the data they need themselves and maybe build up copies of data in spreadsheets and store them on their desk. You know, the concepts that we're seeing, the issues that we're seeing today in reporting analytics are not new. You know, when software development was really becoming formalized back in the 70s and 80s, this thing came out called the capability maturity model out of Carnegie Mellon. And it basically says there's kind of 5 levels to any process or capability like reporting and analytics. You start off initially at the initial level, everything's kind of chaotic and ad hoc, and you get stuff done because you have really smart people working super hard. And then if you get a little more advanced, you've got some steps documented and repeatable. And if you get a little further than that, you've got actually some processes defined. Hey, here's how we're going to take in requests for information. Here's how we're going to work with it. Here's how we're going to deliver reports and analytics. You get to the managed point, you're actually tracking how well you do that. And that's kind of part of what we're going to focus on today. And then beyond that, obviously you get to want to improve when you want to move up in terms of your level on the capability maturity model. Think about practices and processes that are going to solve this for you, or buying a particular business intelligence or reporting application in order to improve. We really haven't seen organizations have much success in switching applications. All of the leading software packages are very similar. So the first technique that I wanted to talk about this morning is tracking. And when we talk about tracking, we're talking about tracking requests for information, people asking for reports and dashboards and analytics and predictive models. Tracking deliveries, what actually gets built to deliver that? You know, somebody asked for more information about financial trending and we delivered 2 reports and a dashboard, right? And then the last is tracking usage. We delivered 2 reports and a dashboard. Is anybody using that? Are they using it regularly? Who's using it? So these 3 aspects of tracking, I think, are absolutely critical if you want to improve how efficient you are. If you don't know how efficient you are, how could you possibly improve it, I guess? Some people get really hung up, some organizations, on trying to track how much work it's going to take and trying to do a super good job up front of saying, well, if you want that information around financial trending, it's going to take us 23.68 hours to deliver a report that has that in it. And we always counsel people, you know, trying to go to that level of precision is frustrating for everyone. One technique that works is to think about it in t-shirt sizes, right? Small, medium, large, and extra large, right? Is this request that I've received, is it small, medium, large, or extra large? You can actually use a checklist to kind of help yourself categorize that. The whole purpose, obviously, around tracking it carefully is to understand where are we adding value and where are we not. You know, if we're spending a whole bunch of time, you know, making our logo appear on every report and making it spin around in 3 dimensions, that might not be value added. The other important thing is a lot of times when we work with organizations, we all try to add more work. We try to tell the business analysts and report developers, okay, every time you get a request, write it down in this form, and then every time you deliver something, document it on this other form, and then of course you're going to write up nice documentation of what you built. But we haven't seen that work that often. It's easier to track by data exhaust, the leave behinds of people's work, rather than adding more work on top by adding them to track, asking them to track things, right? Again, an aspect of efficiency, part of efficiency, is velocity. How much work can you get done in a duration of time? And so by using like a t-shirt size idea and the idea of tracking data exhaust, we could say, hey, we got this request, we thought it was a large t-shirt worth of work, and let's see, between the date we tracked the request and the date when we published the report that resolves the request, it was 1 week, so our velocity is a large t-shirt in a week. And then in the future, we're going to try to improve that velocity. A bunch of different tools. This is, I think, a really exciting thing in the last 5 years, is there are a bunch of low-cost, easy-to-use tools for tracking requests and creating that sort of data exhaust. So the one on the left there is actually the one that we use here at Perkins Consulting. That's Microsoft's Visual Studio Team Services, which is free for small teams. Jira there in the center from Atlassian. Great tool, great product, also very low cost. Axosoft there to the right. Some people even use things like Zendesk, which is really more of a support tool, but either way it gives you any of these types of tools, give you something that you can be up and running on literally within 30 minutes because they're all cloud hosted. You don't have to buy any servers or anything like that. So if you're not tracking requests already, we certainly advocate starting there. Another concept I wanted to mention quickly is a lot of times people have a hard time driving usage. We create reports, we create dashboards and analytics, but nobody actually uses them. How to get the business to really take hold of these things, make sure we're building the right things and that they're actually being used. Part of that can be to tie it into existing sort of management and business frameworks. At the strategy level, this might consist of something like the balanced scorecard or strategy maps. at the initiative level, like we're going to do a new business initiative, we're going to improve our manufacturing productivity, you might see concepts like Lean or Six Sigma. If you can tie reporting and analytics into these management frameworks, we've seen a higher level of efficiency because you're building what needs to be built the first time. You've tied it to some pre-existing business concepts. And then at the process level, if you haven't seen Plan, Do, Check, Act or Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, just common, well-known process frameworks. And if you could tie reporting and analytics into that, it all becomes more efficient. Checklists. Atul Gawande, if you've never read his articles in the New Yorker, they're available on their web, and they're really entertaining and fun to read. But really, he has popularized the use of checklists in healthcare over the last 10 years with some of his articles and books. And we found that this is a really powerful concept, something as simple as literally a 4-point checklist. Every time we release a new report or dashboard, we're going to check off that we did these 4 things. Simple, quick, easy, has a lot of benefits. It makes our process more tangible. It's more than just somebody talking about it. Here's something you can do. It makes decisions happen more quickly, be more consistent, and be less personal. Right? So when someone's pestering a report developer saying, why isn't this report done yet? They can say, well, I'm sorry, but it's in the middle of our release checklist and it's not done yet. You know, that's where we're at. It doesn't become such a personal one-on-one sort of situation. The other idea is, you know, we found that checklists are really helped when they have heuristics or rules of thumb to go with them, right? And gates, like if a report hasn't been gone through the release checklist, that's a gate. Then it can't be out and available for people to use, right? Here's an example. This is not something that we created. This is from extremepresentations.com, but you see this all over the internet. I just think it's a great little heuristic. You start in the center. What would you like to show in a particular graph or chart? And then it just walks you through. If you're trying to show a comparison, you go upwards. If it's a static comparison, you go to the left, and it shows you some different options of how to do that. So heuristics, I think, are very helpful in improving efficiency because they keep people from getting stuck, right? Where do I start? I've got this blank screen in front of me. I'm supposed to be building a dashboard or a predictive model. Where do I start? So we have a whole collection of these types of things that are really helpful. Talk a little bit about agility as another technique, right? If you haven't seen the Agile Manifesto, I recommend it. It's literally about 10 points. It fits in a couple of paragraphs. But really what it says is rather than getting hung up on a lot of really formal written requirements and documentation up front before you do anything, we are going to value interacting with people, creating working reports and dashboards and analytics, and getting feedback on those quickly. And these concepts about agile development, I think, are actually a really good fit for reporting and analytics. Another opportunity for efficiency is to realize that often, very often, pretty much all the time, people don't know what they want in terms of a report or dashboard until they see something that's not what they want. So using wireframes and mock-ups, and again, there are extremely low-cost cloud-based tools available to do wireframes and mock-ups, can be super valuable in terms of very quickly putting something in front of your business customer and being able to confirm, is this what you're after? Is this going to deliver the business value that you need? Again, another concept borrowed from agile software development is this idea of sprints, that we work in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 week periods called sprints, and at the end of each sprint there's an opportunity for the business to reprioritize, to say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't We don't want to focus on this area of reporting. We want to focus on this other area. But within that sprint, their options to reprioritize are greatly reduced, and that lets the people who are doing the development kind of get into it, get their heads down, get stuff done without constant interruption. Having those types of sprint rhythms, you know, where every week or 2 weeks we're having these predefined sprint planning meetings, stand-up meetings, things like that, having those types of rhythms can also increase in proficiency by preventing the infamous going dark syndrome. This is when you ask a business analyst or a report developer to create something, and they keep telling you every week, it's almost done, it's almost done. Let me go sit in my dark room for another week, and I swear it'll be done this time, right? And having regular rhythms really helps shine the light on that, break that model, and increase efficiency. Automated testing is an area that we see a tremendous amount of opportunity. A lot of times when people create a report, or they create a dashboard, or they create a descriptive statistical model, there's very little testing. If there's any, it was done by the developer and it was done once, right? There are tools out there now, and Selenium's the one that I always think of, that if you're delivering web-based reports, lets you set up automated tests against those reports. And the advantage of automated testing is it can be run over and over and over again. So as that report or dashboard or whatever it is changes over time, you can confirm that it's still meeting the original business purpose. It's still functioning. It's still delivering the data as expected. And the data itself has not shifted underneath that report or dashboard or analytic. Of course, this only works if you actually define the tests. And we find the easiest way to do it is to define the test up front, literally do test-driven development, or TDD. Define the test up front and then create the report, dashboard, whatever it is that satisfies that test. And have this process of testing be required on a release checklist. This is a very confusing eye chart sort of document, but really all I wanted to show is that, you know, you can think about testing in a pretty organized way. At the top of this drawing, you see under basic environments, we recommend at least two, right? That you have a development area where you're developing reports and analytics, and a production area where they're out and working for the organization. But then you can come down this diagram, and if you've got the capacity and want to improve quality and consistency, there's a lot of ways to break it down further. I'm not going to go into this whole complicated eye chart. Another idea, and I can't remember where we first heard this idea from, is this idea of quality stamps. And part of the reason for quality stamps is that so much of building reports and analysis is munging the data. I love that term. I didn't invent that, but munging the data. There's a lot of studies that say that report developers spend 80% of their time trying to get the data right before they're actually building tables and charts and graphs and things like that. And yes, you know, having a dimensional data model, a data mart or data warehouse, having well-defined data sets help to reduce that. But quality stamps, and they can be as simple as like a gold star from kindergarten, that you can put on a report and say, hey, this report has passed tests. It has gone through the release checkout. They not only help demonstrate that value, they in a way become a little bit of marketing or advertising, right? And they increase the perceived value of your reporting and analytics organization. So, you know, what we recommend is thinking about quality stamps, you know, maintained, tested, proof of concept, be able to show visually to consumers of a report or an analytic the level of quality that's in that. Another important concept is building for reuse. We have, at Perkins Consulting, we have a cloud-based application called Alex that helps do a lot of these things for organizations. But the keys are track usage so that you'd know what reports and analytics are actually being used, and have an inventory of those reports and analytics, ideally with data dependencies inside of it so that you know if you change some source data, which reports and analytics will be affected. And again, rather than making somebody manually maintain this inventory, we highly recommend that it be maintained automatically. Don't add more work to your team. You want to encourage reuse at different levels. You know, let's reuse an entire report. Let's reuse a complicated calculation around relative dates. Let's reuse some style guides and incorporate those into templates. If you have a really good inventory of all of your reports and dashboards and analytics and components of those, then you can apply a search engine over the top. That's what our Alex solution does. And you can also search people as well as reports, so you can look at the data exhaust and start to understand that, you know what, Sally in accounting is really the person who has the most expertise around financial trending, right? Because we can see her creating the reports, we can see the data exhaust that she's creating them, she's using them, she's modifying them. Again, it's also important to define data sets. If someone goes through a lot of data munging and creates a super useful set of data related to a topic like financial trending, let's define that and publish that definition so that other people can find it, can search for it, and can reuse it. Okay, so getting down towards the end here, how do we recommend getting started? How do we make all this happen? Well, the first thing is just to honestly assess where you're at on the maturity model. You know, we have a lot of documents and checklists that we've built here to help assess organizations and where they're at on that capability maturity model as it relates to reporting and analytics. But doing that up front, where are you? Coming up with some really basic processes. We always recommend starting simpler and only adding complexity when you see the need for it. That includes some gates, like, hey, this request for a report or dashboard or whatever has been approved. That could be a gate. Releasing it so that people in the organization can use it. That could be a gate. And checklists to go along with that. Again, get the tracking in place and make sure the tracking doesn't impose extra work. Make sure the tracking is fueled by how people actually do things and use things. Track requests for information, track how those requests were satisfied, and track whether or not anybody's actually using it. Establishing roles, that's a whole webinar unto itself, but having clearly defined roles for the team is important. Another one that I didn't go into in this webinar is the whole process of request management and triage. How do you take all these people in an organization asking for more and manage that? And delivery, and again, focus on the data piece first. We don't find that people are inefficient because they can't decide what colors to make a bar chart. Where they are inefficient is they don't have tidy data and they can't get the data into the bar chart, right? Or they don't have the data they need at all. Okay, so those are, again, trying to keep it real simple, just some basic 6 steps to implementing higher levels of efficiency. And then once you've done that, obviously, then you have the opportunity to iterate, to identify areas that aren't up to snuff, where you could improve your velocity, the number of t-shirts you can crank out in a week, or improve your quality. Another important key thing, and kind of in way of a conclusion, is to think about customer satisfaction. The people in the organization who use these report and analytics, that's the customer. if they can't access it, they can't find what they need, they're spending some ungodly percentage of their time searching. That's not customer satisfaction, and that's probably about as critical as efficiency. And also watch out for effectiveness. Sometimes we see people spend a lot of time building a very elaborate dashboard or analytic and then discover, well, it's not even the right thing, even though it does look beautiful and does work. What we can do in way of help is Perkins Consulting does provide sort of a free assessment. Like I said, we've got some assessment checklists and stuff that we can go through on a web call and kind of help build that initial baseline. Okay, so hopefully we're going to open it up for questions now. There's a questions capability there in the webinar tool where you can actually type in and enter a question. So we'll kind of step through any questions that we see appear there. And then once we've done that, we'll wrap this up. Anyone who's interested in a copy of these slides can certainly email me. My email address is there on the screen, and we can follow up and send those to you as well. And we will, at some point, get a video of this webinar put up onto our website, so you'll be able to find it there as well. So I don't believe I'm seeing any questions. I don't know if it's possible for us to actually... Oh, there we go. Let's see here. Yeah, so good question here. How can a small organization drive maturity, move up that capability maturity model when the costs of doing so seem so high? I would argue the costs, if you pursue it correctly, I think the cost should be relatively low. Again, some of the tools for tracking requests and deliveries and things like that are free, right? They're cloud-based and they're free, or they're less than $10 a month. And it's the effort to kind of put in place some of the checklists and better processes that probably has a cost, although it would certainly be a soft cost. Okay. Any other questions out there? Okay. Yeah, so it looks like another question about how applying Agile, not just to reports and analytics, but to databases, right? How can you agilely develop a database? That is definitely a more challenging task. But there are ways to do it, right? You can have your database models under source code control and tightly managed there so that you can incrementally add or change the database, and you can have automated tests prepared to run against that database to make sure that any changes that you're making are not breaking that database. We also see automated testing frequently used to look for regression problems in data, being able to run the automated tests against data from, say, 2012, 2013, and verify that the data hasn't shifted, meaning that perhaps your ETL, your processing of that data has changed. So that's another way to avoid that. So there are automated ways to manage the schema changes. There are automated ways to manage the data. There are some great scripting tools out there for managing data. And there are also tool sets and scripting techniques to create test and evaluation data. All right. Any other questions at this point? All right, well, here's my contact information on the screen. Again, please feel free to call or ping with any questions via email a phone call. And we appreciate everybody's attendance and participation today. Thank you very much.